So, a few years back, I moved into this small apartment. Nothing special. It was a studio, just one room with a bathroom and a tiny kitchen area, but it was mine. At the time, I really needed a fresh start. I had just gotten out of a rough relationship, had some family issues going on. You know how life can get. I just wanted to be alone. Reset. Breathe. The apartment was in a quiet building, not far from the city, but tucked into a peaceful neighborhood. No noise. No neighbors making a fuss. Seemed perfect. When I first moved in, everything felt normal. A little empty, sure, but normal. I even joked with my friend that the place was so quiet it could be haunted. Yeah, I probably shouldn't have said that. A few days later, something weird happened. I woke up one morning, stretched, yawned, and felt this burning on my back. I looked in the mirror, and that's when I saw them. 3 scratches, right across my shoulder blade. Long, thin, and slightly red. Not bleeding, but definitely there. My first thought, did I scratch myself in my sleep? I mean, I've done that before. Maybe I rolled onto something, or the bed frame had a nail sticking out or something. But I checked everything. The sheets, the headboard, my own nails. Nothing made sense. Still, I brushed it off. Maybe I just slept weird. Maybe I bumped into something and didn't realize. We all get scratches sometimes, right? But then it happened again. A couple nights later, I woke up with more scratches, this time on my left arm. Same pattern, 3 lines, evenly spaced, red and burning. That's when I started to feel off. I was living alone. I locked my door every night. No pets, no visitors. So how did I keep getting scratched? And always 3 of them. Always in a straight pattern, claw-like. That's when I started having trouble sleeping. I'd lie awake for hours just staring at the ceiling, wondering if something was in the room with me. I started sleeping with a small light on, just a little night lamp in the corner. It made me feel less alone, but it didn't stop the scratches. Then came the feeling, you know that sensation when someone's watching you? Like the back of your neck goes cold and your instincts scream, "Get out?" That started happening almost every night. I'd be sitting on the bed scrolling through my phone when I'd suddenly feel eyes on me. But when I turned around, there was nothing. Sometimes I'd catch a flicker in the corner of my eye like a shadow moving quickly, but every time I looked, it was gone. I told myself I was tired. Maybe I was just stressed, but that feeling, it wouldn't go away. It got worse. So here's the thing about that apartment. The bed was right next to a wall, but not touching it. There was maybe a 10-centimeter gap between the bed and the wall. And for some reason, I couldn't stop thinking about that space. Every night I imagined something reaching out from that gap. A hand maybe, or something worse. I know it sounds stupid, but I couldn't take it anymore. So one night I shoved the bed completely against the wall and stuffed the little space with an old blanket, like I was sealing it off. Did it help? Not really, but it made me feel safer, at least for a while. Then came the night that changed everything. It was a regular night. I brushed my teeth, turned off most of the lights, crawled into bed. I left the night lamp on, like always. At some point I fell asleep, and I had the worst dream I've ever had. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I felt something pinning me down. Not like sleep paralysis. This was different. I felt hands pressing into my back. Hot, burning, like claws. When I finally woke up, I was drenched in sweat. My heart was racing, and the pain on my back, it was unbearable. I ran to the bathroom and pulled up my shirt, and what I saw, 3 scratches. But these were deeper. They started from the top of my shoulders and went all the way down my back. Long, clean, straight. Like something had dragged its claws across my spine while I slept. The skin was red and raised. They looked fresh, too fresh. I stood there in shock, staring at the mirror. Something was in that apartment, and it didn't want me there. I didn't hesitate. I didn't wait to find out what would happen next. That morning, I packed up everything I could carry, threw it all into suitcases and bags, left behind stuff I couldn't take. I didn't even call the landlord. I just wrote a note and left it on the counter. "I'm sorry, I can't stay here." That's all I said. I locked the door, left the key under the mat, and drove away. I didn't look back, not once. When I got back to my parents' house, I didn't say anything. Not to them, not to my friends. What was I supposed to say? "Hey, I ran away from my apartment because something invisible scratched me in my sleep"? No one would believe me. I didn't want them to think I was crazy, so I kept it to myself. But the scratches, they stayed visible for days. Red, raised, burning. Proof that something had happened. Even if no one else believed it, I knew it was real. I live somewhere else now, with my friend and my daughter. It's a small place, but it's warm, bright, full of life. I haven't had a single scratch since I moved. No weird feelings, no shadows, no nightmares. Sometimes I wonder if it followed me, but it never came. I think whatever it was, it wanted that apartment to itself, and I was the intruder. This happened to me a few years ago when I moved into an apartment in Tokyo. On the surface, it seemed like a decent place. Nothing fancy, just a small one-bedroom apartment in an older building. The price was good, the neighborhood was quiet, and it was close to the train station. Honestly, I thought I'd gotten really lucky. But looking back now, I realized that was too good to be true. When I first moved in, things were pretty normal. I unpacked, set up my furniture, and got used to the new space. The place had a bit of a musty smell, but I figured it was just because it hadn't been lived in for a while. I'd fall asleep to the sound of traffic outside and wake up to birds in the morning. Normal stuff. But after a few nights, I started noticing little things. Small things. Things that were easy to brush off at first. Like how I'd hear the closet door creak open in the middle of the night, or how I'd find my remote control in a completely different spot than where I left it. I told myself I was just tired. Maybe I moved it and forgot, but it kept happening every single day. One night, I was lying in bed, half asleep, when I heard my front door click like it had unlocked. I shot up and listened. Then I heard soft, slow footsteps coming down the hallway toward my room, but I lived alone. I jumped out of bed, flipped on the lights, and grabbed something, just in case someone had broken in, but the door was locked and chain was still on. I searched the whole apartment and found nothing, but the thing that freaked me out the most were my slippers had moved. They were now sitting in front of the door, side by side, like someone had stepped into them and then stepped out. After that night, weird stuff started happening more often. My TV would turn on by itself in the middle of the night. Once, it switched to static, just a loud blaring noise at 2 a.m. I yanked the plug out of the wall, but the image stayed on the screen for a few seconds after. The bathroom light would flicker every time I walked by. My phone alarm would go off at random hours, even when I hadn't said anything. I started recording voice memos just to prove I wasn't losing it. Sometimes I'd listen back and hear faint knocking or whispering in the background, sounds I swear I didn't hear in the moment. One morning I woke up feeling sore. I rolled out of bed and noticed a few red scratches on my forearm. They stung like they were fresh. I stared at them for a long time, trying to remember if I'd bumped into something, but I hadn't. I didn't even have long nails, and I lived alone with no pets, and there were no sharp furniture near the bed. A few days later, I got another scratch, this time on my back. I only noticed it because it burned when I was in the shower. It looked the same, thin, red, and fresh. That's when I started getting scared. The worst moment came not long after. I was asleep, or at least I thought I was. Then I woke up suddenly with that heavy feeling you get when someone's staring at you. I opened my eyes and there it was, a dark figure just standing at the foot of my bed. I couldn't see its face. It looks just like a shadow, tall and still, almost like smoke, but solid at the same time, and I couldn't move or scream. It was like my body refused to respond. I forced myself to reach for the lamp beside my bed. When I turned it on, the figure vanished like it was never there. I sat up the rest of the night with lights on, blanket pulled up and heart racing. The next day, I told one of my coworkers about what was happening. She looked serious and said I should see a Reiki Nai, like a spiritual advisor, someone who deals with ghosts and energy. I was skeptical but desperate, so I made an appointment with this old man who had been doing this for decades. He came to my apartment, walked around, and stood silently in the middle of the hallway for a while. Then he said something I'll never forget. "There's something here. It's not trying to hurt you, yet, but it's not happy you're here." He gave me some salt and told me to leave small bowls in each corner of the room, and told me to pray and not to speak to it or acknowledge it. Just act like it doesn't exist. I did everything he said, but it didn't help. On my last night in that apartment, I had a dream, or maybe it was more like a vision. I was lying in bed staring up at the ceiling, and then I saw the shadow again. But this time, it wasn't at the foot of my bed. It was above me, hanging upside down from the ceiling, and its face just inches from mine. It didn't move, didn't blink, just hovered there, like it was watching me sleep. I woke up gasping for air. That morning, I packed all my things in a rush. I didn't even bother organizing anything. I left half my stuff behind, but I couldn't stay another night. I moved out without even telling the landlord in person. I just dropped the keys in the mailbox and made some excuses that I no longer needed the room on the phone. A few weeks later, a friend told me that the apartment was still empty. No one had moved in. She also told me something else. A few years ago, a man had died in that same apartment, alone. His body wasn't found for weeks. People said he'd been acting strange in the months before, complained about shadows, said he felt watched all the time. I never looked up the details. I didn't want to know anymore. It's been a while since that happened. I live in a new apartment now, in a different part of the city. It's quiet, warm, and nothing strange. But sometimes, just sometimes, I still wake up in the middle of the night to check the foot of my bed. Old habits, I guess. If there's one thing I learned, it's this. If a place doesn't feel right, trust your gut. No cheap rent is worth your peace of mind, because sometimes the thing making the noise at night isn't just your imagination. Sometimes it's real.